Okay, so in our last episode of Suspension 4, we had looked at lots of eye candy on a suspension on that white car with the red nose. And I felt like it was fairly important to show you that because that is the extreme end of where we're at right now with some of the suspension components you can put on these cars. I mean, it has all the absolute bells and whistles that we're fairly aware of that are good, reliable parts. Then it came to me, and this is probably why things seem a little bit like they're bouncing around. It came to me that most people aren't going to go that extreme with their stuff. And when I say extreme, I don't mean in the sense that it's too racy, too edgy. I mean extreme in the sense that it's so far removed from original that and it's also fairly expensive stuff. So assuming that we have the energy and capacity to keep doing these web-based episodes, I thought maybe we'll just use my car as a little bit of a guinea pig. This is what I mean. What I'm saying is that the suspension on my car was bone stock. This is a car that was parked in 1972 and had not been back on the road since. Now obviously I have taken it out a few times and checked everything out and getting familiar with how our motor's doing, because we have a really advanced motor in this car, and we're also checking out how our rear suspension is set up now and behaving, and now we're focusing on the front. Well, I didn't want to create this episode where it was all this high bling factor stuff that a lot of people can't A, afford, and B, most people probably aren't really as interested in putting that kind of stuff on their car. So what I'm saying is we're going to do probably a series on this of just continuously morphing cars, or morphing the suspension of this car, for example. Today what I'm doing is I'm changing out the upper link from the stock one to what is commonly referred to as a GTA style adjustable upper link. It just means that I can get camber and caster a little easier on this car. So if you're out, track day event, and you notice that you're having a little bit of a push issue, you would probably want to change the camber and possibly the caster on your car. Again, depending on a lot of factors, and we won't dive into that because that's only going to make a lot of people's heads swim. But what we're talking about doing today is we're taking out this old stuff. What we're looking at here is the caster and camber rods are right here, okay? And they're linked into the top of the spindle. That ball joint right there, and I realize you probably can't see it all that well, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you. That ball joint, the upper ball joint on top of the spindle, that ball joint right there is absolutely had it. Although this car has not seen very much road time, the ball joint rubber boot is completely destroyed. Everything up here is dry rotted and everything needs to be changed out. Now, yes, you can repress bushings here on where the camber and caster meet, but right here, this ball joint, that's a little bit more of a mad science, so typically you're better off just changing out the upper link itself. And so today what we're focusing on is we're changing out the caster and camber links and the ball joint itself, okay? Now the reason we're doing that is because the same problem I have down here as I do up here. The boots are completely worn out, there's a lot of slop in the way they move, and that negates a good positive experience on the driving. So we're changing this out, changing that out. We're also going to finish up putting in a portion of our Alphaholics rod link system. This is part of their Geo kit. As I said, this car is going to slowly morph into various things on the suspension, so you can kind of get a sense of what individual components do. So this could be expanded out to probably several more series on suspension. Anyhow, so what we're going to do is we're changing out the sway bar as well. Now, the stock sway bar for 67, they're okay. I'm going to show you some of the hardware with them, and when they get tired, they get bent. And when they get bent, it really puts a lot of stress on the load points here. And if you take out your sway bar, and you notice right where it mounts to the front of the radiator support, if that area is rusty, or if that area has got rust through, you need to fix that before you upgrade to a heavier front sway bar. The reason is the minute you put that heavier sway bar on there, if you load this car into a turn, it's most likely going to just literally rip right out, okay? It's such a noted problem that there's reproduction parts to replace the entire front sway bar location points, okay? So pay attention to that, take a good look at that on yours, and when you drop out that sway bar, if you see that rust, deal with it before you go any further, because it's only going to haunt you later. So effectively what we're doing today is we're changing out the caster and camber arm package up top. We're going to also change out the lower ball joint, and I'll show you how bad these are when I pull them out as compared to what's going in. Now, the upper portion of this, the caster and camber arm, I'm not changing them out for brand new ones. I'm changing them out for really, really good shape used ones. Reason I'm doing that is because all this stuff is going to continue to be changed, and we're going to show you how all that is done, for one. But two, we're going to be upgrading for other items. It doesn't mean those other items will stay on the car. It just merely means that it's probably more informative to you to see how some of the other items that are out there available work with the car. Now, my car is never going to be a track car. This is the first Alpha I ever bought 100 years ago. And so I have a very specific, theme in mind for this car. And as you've already seen, I have the old vintage GTA magnesium wheels for it with vintage style tires. So I'm really limited on how low the front end can get. So there's only certain items that are out there that I can really use and keep this car where I can keep those wheels on it. It's a lot of sacrifice for the sake of a wheel, but effectively I'm really just trying to maintain a time capsule, if you will. Now right now what I've done is I've taken a bottle jack and I've jacked up the spindle just to get some weight off the caster and camber arms. I've already loosened up the 24mm bolts inside the engine bay that hold the camber arms in place, so those are ready to come out. So I'm going to take off the caster arm, and at that point I should be able to take the upper link system off, and I'll show you next to the good used unit that we're putting in. Now again, remember, the units I'm swapping out in this case are temporary. I don't suggest that you go and use used units, because you're only going to be back there sooner than you want to change them out again. But in this case, because we're using the car more or less for a tutorial, it's okay. Now the parts that we're using, they're very low mileage items, and they're in really good shape, so it's not like I'm putting in something that's already going to fall apart. Okay, so now we just took this out. This is the original upper A-arm, as it's often referred to. This is the caster and camber control, okay? This one right here handles the caster, and this one handles the camber. Now, the reality of it is this original unit, granted, the car hasn't been on the road since 1972, but it doesn't mean that heat and time don't affect rubber boots and everything else. This one, the rubber boots are completely destroyed. They're actually kind of gummy. You can't really service them. This one's past it. It's just time to move on. And now the good but used unit we're putting in, because again, all this is somewhat temporary, is this one right here. As you can see, this one has an easier accessible, adjustable for a camber, and this one is not so adjustable. All right, so with us having an upsized tire on our car, it's probably going to be most beneficial for me to put a little bit of a camber into it to help the turning in, and just the obvious wheel clearance, if you will. But anyway, so the point is give yours a good thorough inspection. If you see torn boots, you got to address the problem, gang. They're not going to get better. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure, just for ballpark reasons, if the car get aligned later, we're going to make sure that our pickup points are effectively almost exactly the same on one another, and they have to be just right there. So that means that I can go ahead and just drop this unit right on in. Okay, here's the driver's side lower ball joint, the original. It's never been out of the car before in the car's entire life. Now mind you, this car has only been on the road for 5 years of its entire life. As I said before, the car was last registered on the road in 1972, and after that it sat out in the desert in the hot Arizona sun. Anyway, point is, this is the original ball joint. That much slop in there, along with the vagueness of the bushings and everything else in the upper control arm, creates for a very vague steering input when you're loading into a turn or loading out of a turn. So the point is, nice new one, you can barely move that, okay? That's kind of what you're looking for, because what happens is as the fitting between the ball and the socket are in full contact with one another, it doesn't give the driver negative or vague feedback, and it makes you, well, it makes you a better driver, you know. So I'll be changing this out now. Okay, so a little thing that I like to do just for safety purposes, I like to have, this is basically the same kind of tie-down strap you could buy at any, you know, tool store. And what I do is I wrap it around the upper A-arm and come around to the back side, and I ratchet down to hold the spring and all the components are tightened in place. Then I lower my lift down onto a steel box, if you will, just to keep everything contained. This makes taking out and putting in the new lower ball joint a piece of cake. Okay, it's the end of another long Saturday, and the wife and kids are toe tapping, waiting for me to get out of here so we can go to dinner. And I'm going to give you a rundown of what we did. Alright, so we changed out our old sway bar for just a slightly newer version. Okay, we didn't go something full crazy. We just went with a effectively a 2-liter GTV sway bar with what's called the dog bone style bushings. These are all brand new, so this is a good unit to have for now. Again, we're going through a methodical trial and error to get a feel for the differences as we go, and hopefully we can give you a good report on the differences and the sensations we're getting from the differences. Okay, so that's the whole point of this probably overly methodical thing we're doing. So we changed these. We changed the sway bar out. Okay, we also changed out our upper control arm. That would be the camber and caster arm. They have nice new bushings and ball joints in them, so they're good to go. And we also changed the lower ball joint. So now the car has no negative or vague feeling in it when you're turning the vehicle into a turn. And you know, that's a good stopping point for today. But what I wanted to do now is we're going to go over here and I'm going to show you all the old parts. Don't take this lightly. I mean, if you haven't really dabbled with your suspension, you know the car's been on the road for a long time, then it's probably time to refresh a lot of the ball joints and all the little things underneath. Believe me, it makes a big difference in the end how the driving experience is. Okay, so I'm going to show you the old stuff that was in this car. And mind you, this may be a 40-plus-year-old car, but the suspension's technically only 5 years worth of road use is on it, and this stuff was wasted. So just sitting around doesn't count. It is just as bad sitting around as it is if it was on the road all the time, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's all the old parts. The old lower ball joints. I'm not kidding, just sitting around doing nothing. You have that much play and slop in there, no good. Time to go. Here's the other one, just as bad. All right, so you can't really go wrong changing them out. They're not that expensive. Again, it takes away the vague experience of the drive. You got to remember, this is a car that, when new, they were well known for their handling. We all know that. That's why we own them. So if you are not impressed with your car's driving ability, check the suspension out. The upper control arms, absolutely garbage. I mean, these were just wasted. Sitting around for 40 years in the hot desert, you know, didn't help them any. But, you know, that's what that looked like. Now, the sway bar itself, not so bad. But what I wanted to share with you was the older style lower links for the sway bar. This is the connector rod, and I don't know if you can see that, but that bad boy not only is rusted and very thin, but it's bent. What happens is, if you have the older style, what happens is these are the little bushings that go in between this, and I'll show you how this works. So you have the bushing above and the bushing below, and this goes through. And this is mounted, you know, just for sake of simple arguments, this is mounted to the spring perch. As these bushings start to wear out, they start to stress this bolt. They start to bend, and then they'll eventually break. Also, the other things that start to wear, so when the ball joints are starting to wear, and the upper control arms are starting to wear, then the bushings start to wear, things start to bend, and when things start to bend, things start to break. So this car is being reset up to go back to track events. It was originally set up for the Pan America, and now the car has changed hands, and we have a new owner who is going to do a lot of track events in it. But one of the things I wanted to really make sure we talked about was whether one should or should not have a rear sway bar. That seems to be a real common conversation we get tied into, and the answer is in two ways. The first one is if you have a beefy front bar, something significantly larger or stronger than the original one, then odds are you don't need a rear bar. The other portion of that statement would be, if you have a rear sway bar, you're not really sure whether it's helping you or hindering you, and you're a track guy, go out on the track on your first session, shake your car down. After that session, disconnect one side of that rear sway bar. Then go back on the track again. See if you like the characteristics of the rear end at that point. If you do, then you have your answer. Now, in this particular car, it originally had set up a rear sway bar. In fact, the hangers are still there for it. But what we did was we put in a new style of front bar that you may or may not have seen before. And I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, this car is now set up with a reverse mounted sway bar. And this isn't solid steel, this is tubular steel. So what this does is it's a torsion tube. It absorbs more energy within the tube and transfers less to the other side. So what we have found is when this car is really loading into the turns, it stays really flat. It's a great thing. When we had a rear sway bar on it, it started to hime up a little bit in the rear. So disconnecting was the best option. Once we disconnected it, we went back out again, and we found the car was much more stable. So the answer was get rid of the rear bar. You're going to start seeing more and more of these reverse mounted sway bars. The nice thing about them is it changes the energy dynamics on the car. Instead of everything being loaded to the front of the motor, now the torsional twist is behind the motor. This really stabilizes the car in cornering. And it also makes it far more forgiving when you're laying into the turns and being a more predictable and more balanced drive. Okay, so now we're back on my 67. I don't even know what the hell I'm owning anymore. And how's that? Tony's on there for now, but right now what we do have is we have the Alcoholics trailing arms. No. Okay, so in what was that last one? It was episode 4. Okay. We will change out for the Alcoholics upgraded brake package. That's a must. Other things we're going to change out: sway bar, brake package. The lower ball joints are going out today. No, we pause that for a second. That's all monkeyed up. All right, so let's get started. Boy, that's going to be a whole lot of editing to get rid of all that.